Hello and welcome to Soul Love with Kimness. I am Kim van der Zande, your host, and I'm super excited to share another episode of Soul Love with you, where we share inspirational and empowering stories from the heart. We talk about the beauty and the shadows as both are part of the ascension journey, to remind you that you are powerful, you are magical, and to have trust in what you feel to be true deep within. Enjoy this next episode of Soul Love. Before we start the next Soul Love conversation, I want to invite you to check out my amazing book, Activating the Flower of Love, a sacred guide for manifesting your deepest desires and highest calling. This sacred book, filled with powerful tools and activations, will guide you to open your heart to the beauty and wisdom within you, empowering you to create the life you deeply desire from the foundation of love. You can find Activating the Flower of Love in all the major online and offline bookstores in ebook or paperback, or you can check it out through my website, kimness.nl, where you can also discover the different ways of working with me and the latest updates on new starting programs. Enjoy this next episode of Soul Love. Welcome everyone to a new episode of Soul Love, and today I have the honor and I'm excited to share a sacred conversation with Jaap van Etten, and I welcome you within this sacred space.
Well, thank you. It's a great pleasure to be here.
It really is, and I love, before we start and dive into your beautiful work and your beautiful mission and energy, I love that we're both from the Netherlands. You're living abroad now, but so you have two Dutch people having a beautiful English conversation, but I think it's beautiful. And you also even live near where I live in the Netherlands, so I think it's always beautiful lines how we get to connect with beautiful souls from all over the world. But yeah, there's a similarity in that, so I think it's beautiful to share. What I love, you started your journey like a PhD in biology, and you opened yourself up to now connecting with unicorns and dragons. And I know I'm going from one area to the other in your journey, but I'm just wondering like how it opened up from biology and being pretty theoretical to opening these deeper senses and this searching for this deeper connection and consciousness in new ways. And
that's the journey is always interesting, right? Because
it is.
Basically, what I feel is we have a purpose when we come in.
Yes.
So we have two options. One option is that we go into our beliefs about who we are supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are, let's say, following standard rules, what everybody is trying to do. And, what parents try to indicate what you're supposed to be in order to be successful, and so on and so forth. There's one path, and a lot of people choose that path, and I'm not saying that out of judgment. At the same time, we often have a purpose, but we need to listen to our hearts in order to find that. Well, being in the time that I was born, it was pretty normal to follow the standard rules, right? So you get a good education and make sure that you earn good money and all that kind of things, because, my parents were, let's say, financially not so rich. And so they wanted better.
Yeah.
So it was almost logic from the very beginning, because of my interest in nature, then I would study biology. I think it was already more or less laid out when I was about 2 years old, when I was in a little jar and put insects into my jar, crawling around,
Yeah.
So from the very beginning, I had this love for nature.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah? What's interesting is that I didn't know, because I forgot, is that when I was little, I was living actually in the forest in the Netherlands, on the Veluwe, and we lived in a home that was too far from a village, so I didn't go to school till we moved to another city, to Breda.
Okay.
And in that time, I was always outside. So for me, nature was not only seeing trees, seeing animals, it was more than that. It was, and according to my mother, I used to say, when they asked, why did you never get lost in the forest? My answer was, well, the trees are telling you where to go to, and there are these little beings. Well, of course, I was told that this was just fantasy because you could not say those kind of things. And since I was brought up Catholic, so as soon as I went to school, well,
Yeah.
you may understand that my ideas were pretty quickly punished, literally punished, because they were not in alignment with what I was supposed to say. You know, and when you're little, I was 5.5 years when I finally went to school. Yeah, you give up,
Yeah.
you know, but it
Yes.
doesn't mean it's not somewhere inside of you.
Yeah.
And I think that is the point that I see now with little children, you know, that they have still that connection that basically is taken away from many us from of us when we were, let's say, a little bit older than those little kids of nowadays, right? So when I went to through my years of school, you may understand that for me it was about, okay, survival
Yes.
within the system. And biology was the closest to
Mm.
what I actually really were connecting with. And I was a typical, yeah, field biologist in
Yeah.
Spain, you know, and this little guy who was always out in nature. So for me, nature was more, but I was not aware of it anymore because I'd
Mm.
given that up. The punishment was a little bit too severe, so to speak.
Yes.
And
But
since,
subconsciously, it still was
yeah,
there in a way. Yeah, I love that
yeah.
because subconsciously you were still drawn to, and you're making the best out of. That's what I love in your.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And I think that a lot of children have done that over time, right? So
Yeah.
we somewhere still know deep inside,
Hmm.
but you search for something that is then the closest, you know, and maybe that's not a conscious choice, but for me it was pretty simple, nature, nature.
Yes.
So I studied biology. And yeah, initially with some wrestling because I was not the easiest person. So anyway, I made the decision to always do something that I was independent of what I was told. You know, that was my reaction to what has happened in the past. And so when I finished my study in Amsterdam at the university, I went to Kenya. Totally independent project, always
Mhm.
in nature, field biology. Oh, I enjoyed it a lot. But already at that time, I began to understand it came back, you know, because it was sitting inside of me.
Yeah.
You know, science alone is not doing it.
Hmm.
Science alone has so many gaps, so many areas where you're not allowed to talk about. You know, the most simple thing was life force. You know, we can't measure life force, so we
Hmm.
don't talk in science about life force. Well, for me, it was the essence. You know, you feel it all around you when you are in nature, right? So that whole journey of, you know, on the one hand, being pushed in a certain direction, otherwise there was no money for your projects and so on and so forth. And at the other end, there was always that longing.
Hmm.
Because I think you cannot deny what's deep inside of you. Yeah, you
Oh,
can try,
yeah.
and then you're unhappy. So, you know, basically, what I was initially doing is starting meditation, transcendental meditation. And now in the 70s, that was the subject, transcendental meditation, and you know, and going into yoga, you know, pranayama, doing all those different things, because somewhere there was that longing,
Yeah.
yeah, to expand. But yeah, how do you do that when you are, you know, later I've been teaching at the University of Utrecht in the
Hmm.
Netherlands, and you know, there are all rules, you know, you cannot go beyond
Yeah.
certain things.
There's a whole blacklist of things. Yes. Yeah.
You know, so from some hand, so frustrating, but that seems to be wherever you go and work, there are always rules. Every organization has their own rules where you're trying to fit into, whether it's in alignment with you or not, in order to make our money and find our place. So you may understand that that tension field was building up.
Yes.
You know, sometimes I think the only way to break through things is when something dramatic is happening, because
Mhm.
otherwise the survival strategies and having to make money and all this kind of things keeps you into a certain, yeah, mold
Yes.
almost, right? Well, in my case, it was when my first wife died from cancer. And
Mhm.
that was such a shock that made me realize, okay, is that really what I want to continue now doing? Putting myself into, you know, into a square hole while I'm fine. In reality, I'm more round, you know.
Yes.
And that was for me the big shift. And yeah, so for me, it was logic to begin to look beyond what is physical.
Yeah.
because that is what I already by that time began to feel. If you want to understand nature, the world that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
because I still have this love for science, don't get me wrong, but the science as we are officially defining it was too limited.
Yeah.
So for me, when I finally realized I need to expand into metaphysics, that's still science.
Yes.
The only difference is you let go of the need that things needs to be measurable,
Mm-hmm.
So experiences suddenly are playing a role in understanding the world. Now,
Yeah.
science is not working with experiences, right? Although it's beginning to change a little bit more, but basically, you cannot measure an experience. Yeah, you can put something on your head with electrodes and see, oh, there is some reaction there, but then you go into the science of your brain, not
Yeah.
into the experience of the person.
No,
Yeah.
but it feels
So,
more also
sorry?
like it feels more expanded, but also in a way the curiosity, your curiosity could open more and could, because that as a child, the curiosity that was in you to go explore nature and to communicate and to interact and yeah, to let that inner child play again. I think for a lot of us that's relearning that again and unlearning all the other stuff to really come to this place. Okay, there's so much more in my soul and my wants expression and wants experiences and want to break out of all these limitations we sometimes
Exactly.
put ourselves in. Yeah.
Yeah, it is literally bringing back the child. If you look
Yeah.
at what science is doing, is going to this logic approach, which
Mm-hmm.
is the left hemisphere. Well, that's very masculine
Mm-hmm.
because you're not allowed to feel because that's not scientific. So science is a masculine thing. But as soon as you say, oh, my experience count, then you include the right hemisphere and suddenly you're more complete. And
Yeah.
not that means that you also have a more complete picture of what the world looks like. Yeah.
Yeah.
So for me, it was a almost logic step, but I needed
Mm-hmm.
that, shock out of the standard thing into I don't care anymore. I'm going my direction. And ultimately, it means that you have to find your own path.
Yes.
So yes, that's why, it's about now metaphysics. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah.
And for me, ecology, you know, eco is our home, right?
Yeah.
Ecos. So the knowledge of the home, the earth that we live in,
Mm-hmm.
is still fundamentally for a proper functioning of humanity in this world, right? So to then add to that metaphysical ecology, allowing the subtle energies and the subtle beings to be part of it,
Mm-hmm.
well, then we get a much better and complete, let's say, picture of how we need to function to fulfill our role in that totality
Yeah.
of plants, animals, invisible beings, subtle energies,
Mm-hmm.
and measurable energies, the whole enchilada, so to speak.
Yeah. But it's cracking open all the visions we get, or all the limitations and the like we get it when at school and when it's really going on this inner exploration. And for some of us, that's really a brave journey because we've so been conditioned in this box or to think in this. And now like it's taking out all the foundation and then really starting at new and wondering like, okay, but I also love in your story like the interconnectedness of everything. And it goes beyond our physical touches and it goes beyond, well, that is inviting us to question everything and to with open eyes. Yeah. So I
Yes.
think that's beautiful in your journey.
Yeah, I think it goes even a step farther. It's that willingness to let go of all your belief structures
Yes.
again and again and again.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, then things that are a little bit too far away from what you believe,
Mm-hmm.
you will throw out. If it's not conscious, you do it subconsciously.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to include really new things, you have to be willing to let go of your old. So one of my guides said a long time ago, and I've given that example to people several times. He said one day when I was saying, I don't know, I'm get so stuck into the whole thing. How can I make really true changes? He said, oh, it's very simple. You know, so when you get up in the morning, you say to yourself, I throw everything I believe in the air.
Yeah.
And some of it may come back into you, and some of it will drop next to you. So that's what you don't need anymore.
Yeah.
This is apparently what you still need,
I
you know.
love that. Yeah. Yeah, it's the same almost, but that's more in a conscious way. When people move and they leave all their stuff for a year in boxes, everything that you take out is what you truly need, and the rest at one point you can just. But again, that also works with our energy field and with our subconscious and conscious. So I love that, like throwing everything in the air and just
Yeah,
what is really your truth will come back, and the rest will just fall away and
but that's
will
fun, right?
open you up to look at the world in a different way. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's the only way I personally believe where you are continuously aware of the need to let go of concepts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Every structure we make is in fact already a limitation.
Yes.
Yeah. And it's not right or wrong, but
No.
it is a limitation. So if you are aware of the fact that it is a limitation,
Mhm.
you can also say, okay, in this moment I work with this limitation, but I'm not going to hold on to that.
Yeah.
So tomorrow, maybe you think differently.
Yes.
One of the things when I started crystalline movements is one of the activities that we do, 3.5 years ago, people were expecting from me from this is how it is. And I would say, no, this is where I am. Maybe I tell you next week something different. And for a
Yes.
lot of people, it's like, but then what's the truth? So the truth is what is in that moment feels from your heart
Yes.
as your truth that you like to work with,
Yeah.
but not as the truth.
No.
It is
Yeah.
a truth that you in this moment work with. And that's a
And we
different
evolve
way.
so quickly as well. So it's from this, like in our consciousness now, this is our understanding of things. But when we grow and expand, we also need to, from this new awareness, need to look around us and see everything from this new lens or this higher vibrational perspective. And then we suddenly see different things and more puzzle pieces fall into place. So I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful.
Yeah. And basically, and looking back, I've made a lot of mistakes over time because as soon as you go into that, what is not measurable, what's your reference system,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So what you do is you build it up. That
Mhm.
means that you have to be always open for other people's opinions, other experiences, because otherwise you lock it into your own simple experience, and then you will lock it into that limited amount of things
Mhm.
that you can oversee. So, so one of the things that initially I use is dowsing, because yeah, you have to learn, you have to do your experience. So dowsing is a very good method to start,
Mhm.
assuming that you can go into that dowsing state sufficiently. But with all the training, and even today, I'm now dowsing for more than 30 years,
Yeah.
if I'm not careful, I douse what I was expecting to get.
Mhm.
And that is I think, the biggest challenge. If you really ask me, what's the biggest challenge in moving from that physical measurable into that, not so measurable metaphysical,
Mhm.
is that our belief structure is a very strongly determining the outcome
Yeah.
of what you are researching. Yeah.
Yes.
So that is why that statement of throw it in the air and see where it falls is so important, because it is so easy. And I have made a lot of mistakes over time. You're like, you think you see a pattern, then you think, oh, that's it. So the next time that you dance, you confirm that pattern.
Yeah.
Well, that pattern was based on limited concept. So it's always good to mention that when you are on this journey, the importance of never fixing,
Mhm.
never.
Yeah.
Always be open for, oh, here's where I am. Tomorrow may be different attitude. That is, I think, very, very important.
Yeah. I love that.
Last thing is learning to communicate with people that
Mhm.
have at least the willingness to also see that what they're holding is not the truth. Because as you know, if you go and discuss things with
Yeah, no.
people who
It's lost energy for both. So yeah.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, and then you don't grow.
No.
Because the only thing is you waste your energy in argumenting and having arguments about things. And
Yeah.
no,
Yeah.
yeah,
I love that. But I also love like in your I'm wondering like how that came into being. Like at one point you also started to see like crystal skulls and starting to metaphysically examine what they did, or I don't know how that came on your path and how that opened this whole communication, because you're communicating with dragons, and how
yeah.
that's
Well, I think what our problem is, the biggest problem is that we don't know who we are.
Mm.
We don't know our potential. We have forgotten so many things. Yeah. I think that is where we actually need to start to understand that our concept of what a human being is so limited. Yeah. So we have been given a tremendous amount of possibilities and potentials. Everyone, I hear so many because in the work that I do is people I hear so many times, I don't know what my purpose is. Oh, I can't do this. And it's like, well, as soon as you say that or believe that, you're
Mhm.
stuck into that idea. I think we have a tremendous amount of potential. And I think that's the most important thing that I would say if anybody who is listening to this takes away is accepting that they have an unbelievable potential. Yeah. So start exploring what your potential is. Yeah. So when I was starting, it's funny to tell how I really start. So when the very first thing that I did,
Mhm.
it was about 3 months after my wife passed, and I was so lost. So, and then I was at that time I lived in Leiden, and so
Mhm.
I went to a fair, and it's an alternative fair,
Yeah.
and I did a reading here, reading there, and I was like, oh my goodness, no, this is not for me. And then there was this little line, and I was okay. Let me check that out. And then
Mhm.
there were brochures, and I saw a brochure about Reiki. And I'm like, well, maybe that's what I need to do. I don't want to wait in the line. I just sign up. So I signed up for the Reiki course. So I was so excited because this was different. I was
Yeah.
exploring new things. My scientific frame of mind
Yeah.
was rattling around. So I, in Reiki, you say, you're sitting this position and that position and that position. I can tell you, after doing it a couple of weeks, I was so unbelievable bored. Yeah.
Yeah.
I said, this is not for me. Unless, well, what is it actually that I feel when I sit there?
Yes.
And when I feel something, do I have the courage to mention that to the person? And in
Hmm.
the beginning, we're all friends, so I could do that.
Yes.
And then maybe totally wrong or say something nonsense or whatever, but do I have the courage to say it?
Hmm.
Yeah. And so that was like beginning to feel and give yourself permission
Yes.
to be right or wrong about it, because there is no right or wrong. There is
Mhm.
just my experience, and the only thing that you do is, oh, is that similar to yours or not? And that's how we can learn.
Yes.
And for me, that was a key moment. That
Hmm.
willingness to say, this is what I feel. Very nervous initially. Like, well, maybe I say something stupid.
Yeah.
But it was that breaking through that idea that you cannot say what you feel. You
Mhm.
have to have proof for what there is.
Yeah.
Well, I don't have proof when I was sitting there in the different positions, right?
Yeah.
So that gift was way bigger than I realized in that moment, because that was the shift that I needed to make
Yeah.
in order to give myself permission to say, okay, what I feel has value. Maybe wrong, maybe not, but it has value.
But that is,
And that is what,
yeah.
sorry?
Although it's healing the journey when you were 5 and went into the school system where you were sharing like, okay, I can talk to, or I feel the energy of trees or nature, or I get goosebumps. But it's really like it's bringing that whole cycle to completion where you, but
Yeah.
also in Reiki, not per se taking that as your truth, but taking it one step further in discovering, okay, what does it do with me and the person I'm giving Reiki, and what is happening in the energy. So I love that you expand it again, and yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that was for me the beginning was, yeah, after that, it was like opening the doors. Okay, what do I feel here? And I went back to the trees, and I went back to, okay, what is this telling me? And, there was also the time that almost immediately I was exploring things like dowsing and whatever.
Yeah.
But, dowsing is also a tricky thing because there is where I saw people also believing things and then dowsing it. And I said, no, that's not what I want. Then I'm cheating myself. And I'm
Mhm.
not saying that people who douse cheat, because
No.
it is people, some
Yes.
people really feel what they do. But
Mhm.
for me, it was all about I need to learn to feel.
Mhm.
And so then, okay, what is my signal that gives me the feeling that what I feel has in this moment a value? You can also say a certain level of truth for me in this moment. So I needed something for that. And I've been searching in the beginning for, okay, what is it? Well, it was actually so simple. If you feel the resonance in your heart, there's no other way, really, you know.
Yeah.
So once you learn to feel that that's what you think you sense, and there is this resonance with your heart, well, then it's worthwhile to express it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a lot of conversations about our sacred yes. And that's the thing when something comes at us or an inspiration or an invitation and we say yes. But then it's understanding that it's following that, because that's expansion instead of the mind chatter that happens after a couple of minutes that tries to logically bring things in, good or bad, or making the list. So I love that, because that's such an important, I think all of us are coming back to this, to understanding the sensations in our body, in our emotions. They're telling us something, like if this is aligned or not, if it will bring us growth, if it will invite us to expand beyond our current limitations. And so that's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that search, and it was also interesting because you then start talking with people also searching, right? And, it was interesting that some person said to me, it's funny that you say your heart, but I don't feel it in my heart. So how do you feel it? And he said, yeah, I'm not sure I'm going to tell you. I said, why not? Because if you can't tell me, that means that you're still adopting yourself, right? So the person said, well, I get this funny itch in my nose. I said, great.
Yes.
It doesn't matter if you feel that when you are on the right track and you feel that even when you get something in your ear, whatever, then it's your signal.
Yeah.
And that is to learn to trust that signal, And
I think especially in the time, like in the time frame, in the years where you're in, it is also like, I love you being then an example by expressing your truth and stepping out of your comfort zone and expressing your experiences and your energy. You also opened up for others to do the same. Or I think that's beautiful, because now it's more common to talk about these things. But I think 30 years back, it was really like, okay, this is, yeah. Yes, you were really pioneering there. Yes.
Well, I lost a lot of friends at that time because all my friends were scientists, and they thought that I went over the deep end. And so ultimately, there was just not that resonance anymore, So I had to look. Well, but the beauty is that there are always people looking for ways to understand things beyond. So there are always people that are replaced then. People say, oh, I can't find them in my neighborhood. There are always people there.
Yes.
You can always find, if you open your heart and share without fear, you will see that people begin to resonate with you. And then you have let's say, that's what we all need. We need a certain level of confirmation, because we're all searching. Yeah. And there comes a time that you don't need it anymore, that you get so much into your own trust of yourself that that you're continuously on the journey, independent of what others' opinion is. But until that time, and realize you cannot deny, who you have been as well. I cannot deny that I'm also a scientist. Yeah. So those two things, sometimes like, which part am I giving this dominance, right?
I get it. Yes. Yes. But it's all embracing all, because it has led you to where you are today. So it's also understanding how our whole journey, however challenging or beautiful, how it constantly supports us to this realization, being in this now moment, sharing this conversation and inspiring others. And so I think it's beautiful. Yeah. But I'm still curious how in the end you led to crystal skulls or dragon skulls, or how that part opened up for you. And
how that part opened up. Well, the skulls happened pretty early in the journey. Yeah, so it started actually in 1990. Then I started with Reiki, to give a little bit of a time perspective. And in 94, I was here in Sedona on a vacation. And I was, that is how the funny things is. Sometimes guidance is a bit weird, right? I got this obsession of a book. There was a series of 3 from Lazarus, and I had only 2, and I wanted to have the third, and I went in every store. I couldn't find the third, and on the 10th day, we had 10 days here. And the 10th day, I still didn't have that book, almost desperate. Well, I don't know why, but anyway, it was this funny thing. And ultimately, somebody said, oh, there is a private person that is selling those books of Lazarus as well. Go and check with her. So I called her, and lo and behold, not only did she pick up, she had the book, so we went there.
Mm.
Her whole home was full with crystals. And as
Yeah.
soon as she saw that I was interested, she said, "Oh, I have something for you.
Mm-hmm.
Sit in the chair, close your eyes." So I was sitting there feeling silly, but anyway, I was sitting there,
Yeah.
and she puts this cold, heavy thing in my hands. So I didn't know what it was, and I start crying.
Mm.
Half an hour, no clue. After half an hour, I finally could open my eyes and I look at this ugly thing, and I'm like, "Oh my goodness, what is wrong with me?" But
Yeah.
yeah, of course, I needed to know and understand,
Yeah.
what is there, what in me was triggered, not knowing, but
Mm.
I must have felt the energy,
Yeah.
right? So that's put me on that journey. And as always, the scientific mind is, what is the skull? What is the story? What is this and that? So I
Mm.
went first into this whole thing that everybody goes in and that most books are about. But it's the same way with the Reiki. It's very unsatisfying for me.
Yeah.
So my question was, why are people so hooked on ancient skulls?
Mm-hmm.
But here you have these modern carvings. There's still this beautiful crystal.
Mm-hmm.
And if you ask me, after working with one of my crystal skulls for quite a while, it gets also powerful. Now, is there truly a difference or is there no difference? So that's the scientific
Yes.
question.
Yeah, I
And
love
then the
it. Yeah.
feeling needs to come in.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that was the journey, was to understand, and you know we can see certain things beyond, but we always are limited because we are not trained, so we are continuously in training. So one of the gifts, I think, was that suddenly I saw the energy around a crystal and a skull.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw was that it was not an homogeneous field. If you go to any object, most have an homogeneous field.
Mm-hmm.
But living objects don't. They have they're like little layers. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody tells me that it is constant. It's not how I see it. So in the beginning, I doubted myself. I was like, "Oh yeah, Peter, there's something wrong with the way you see." No, I
Yes.
began to understand that this is how it is. We
Mm-hmm.
have about, I think, 100 and something layers around us, but they are grouped in what we call the different energy fields. So we
Mm-hmm.
call about our etheric field and astral field and emotional body and all those things. But if you really look into that, there are a lot of layers in that one.
Mm-hmm.
And each of those layers is actually, because it's not homogeneous, you have a density, less dense, less dense energy. And
Yes.
that gives that impression of layers. So once I saw that, it's like, wow, if I buy a skull, it has 4 or 5 of those layers. But if I work for a while, I see that the number is beginning to increase. So when you awaken the potential,
Mm-hmm.
and then literally the energy field is reflecting the fact that you are awakening the potential.
I love that.
So you may understand that that was like, wow, what does that mean? And how far can we go? And what does that then mean for the person who is doing that?
Mm-hmm.
And what does that mean when you give somebody who is not trained a skull or a crystal that has been, you can call it activated or awakened, I don't care what term you use, but what is it doing with them?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the journey that I went on. And so we started here after we had a number of crystal skulls. We started in this room here, a meditation. We have
Mm-hmm.
done it for until the COVID was there, and we could not do it
Yes.
anymore. But so we have this whole circle right here behind you. There's a whole
Mm-hmm.
circle of crystal skulls.
Yeah.
If you want me to show it to you,
Yeah. Yeah. Please. Yeah.
I can
I
show
don't
it
know if it's
right here.
easy to show, but
Yeah, no, no, it's very easy to show.
oh wow. Oh, that's yeah. I had a different vision with the circle. Wow, that's amazing. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, and this is built up to get answers to questions.
Yes.
Yeah, so people think, oh, you're a collector. No, not so much. I also have the tendency to collect. I will be honest, I have that also. But the key point for me was, okay, what is the different materials are doing? Do they have the same number of layers? Well, you
Mhm.
see, that's the scientific frame of mind. And that is how we started. And then with meditations, we created fields,
Yeah.
and that, so there's a whole story here right in front of you. that is covering now almost 20 years of meditations,
Wow.
weekly
Yes.
meditations. Now I do it via the Zoom, but still it's every week.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to show you this.
Yes. Yeah, but you can feel the powerful energy of the field. And that's when you actively do that. But what I love in your story as well, like you said, activating, or whatever word indeed, activating the potential within a crystal. But it's also understanding that there's so much dormant potential within ourselves. And I think when we go inwardly with curiosity and with openness and aware, like we can also activate these dormant codes within us. And like it's in everything. So I love that when you consciously connect with these skulls, you can see them bloom open and you can see their potential expand. But it's the same with our body, our being, our energy field, our.
Totally,
So I love that.
totally.
It's a beautiful.
Yeah. Actually, that was actually the key thing why I started the crystalline movement.
Mhm.
Realizing that there is a resonance system between many different things, you
Yeah.
know. So the whole setup here is in 12 groups. It is a long story, so it is not maybe for now, but basically, there are all kinds of resonance, and ultimately, all those resonances are based on the number 12. And
Mhm.
that is also our 12 chakras. Well, for me, the chakras are not, our physical system. That is our reflection of it, but it is a universal resonance system. It exists throughout the whole universe.
Yeah.
So there are star systems that are resonating with the chakras. There are whole universes resonating with. We,
Mhm.
we live in a universe that is a third chakra.
Yeah.
And we have a galaxy, the Milky Way, is resonating with the third chakra.
Mhm.
We have a solar system that's resonating with the third chakra. So now you may understand why we are such pushy people.
Yes. I get that. Yeah.
But
Well,
but the interesting thing is that the Earth, and everybody thinks is the third planet.
mhm.
No, it's the fourth planet. And it's the heart planet. And that is, why people love to come here, because in this whole universe, this is the place where we can connect with our hearts.
Yeah. I love
And
that.
that is maybe the biggest learning curve for everyone.
Yeah.
But I totally agree with you when you said that, they resonate. So when we begin to understand that the way you grow
Mhm.
is you activate that, it reflects to you, it stimulates you, you can activate more, and you
Yeah.
go together up and up and up and up. And I think the big gift of the whole study of crystals and crystal skulls is exactly that.
Yeah.
It's
I love
not
that.
about a crystal skull. Okay, now you can ask, well, why the shape of a skull, a crystal skull of a human form?
Mhm.
Well, that is because it then connects to a certain energy field that
Yeah.
is holding the information to help us to understand who we are supposed to become, or say it differently, it taps into the morphogenetic field of our species.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah,
Yeah.
but I
So
also
it's
love your symbiotic. Like, I think it's a beautiful example. If the earth was also like, if we as humans would support each other to be this uplifting, how an amazing world would we create? Like the skulls, like when you invest in a skull, it's mirroring you something back, while allowing you to elevate, and then the skull elevates again by you mirroring a bit. But if the world would be open to that, if all beautiful souls around the world, amazing things could happen if we really are open in this space of
Yeah, totally.
yeah.
It goes even farther, because one of the things that people forget when they talk about a crystal skull is still a crystal, which is a part of Mother Earth.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we are working with crystals from that
Mhm.
perspective, and you raise the vibration of your crystal skull,
Mhm.
you think it has no effect on the Earth?
Yeah. No.
Of
Yeah.
course it is.
Anything. Yes.
Yeah. So we work with, the field. Recently, we started to do that. You know, for everything to exist, there
Mhm.
needs to be an information field, and that's called morphogenetic field nowadays, right? So it holds the potential of a species, a form, whatever. Well, being a biologist, of course, I was like, oh yeah, there's all these forms, and that's why they exist. So never thinking about the fact that there are morphogenetic field for quartz, for fluorite, for calcite, for just a different type of stones. So once I understood that, I went to look for the grid systems of that. So,
Mhm.
so you can go to a grid system and sit on a vortex of that grid system, and you can connect both with what people have used and what the potential is.
Yeah.
And that is where the key is. What is the potential of this whole system that we live in. Well, there is only a very small part that is expressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We are just at the beginning of discovering what's possible. Yeah, I love that.
So what we are invited to do, because we are co-creators, we are in the 11th morphogenetic field development. Moving into the 12th is the enlightened human being. So if you look at those fields, so we are supposed to be co-creators, which means that if you talk co-creator, with who are you creating?
Yeah.
Well, most people say, with all the other people. Like, oh, really? Yeah, that is what we do. It's only about humans, you know? That you see in all the new visions about the world. It's always about humans. No, it's about the earth.
Yes.
It's about every living being. Yeah. Every living being has made it possible that humans can exist. And it's still in our DNA.
Yeah.
And on top of that, you know, if you look at, we are walking ecosystems because we are more bacteria and viruses than we are human cells, right? And if we would really understand that, then we would not separate ourselves, but see that we are an integrated part of the whole Earth system.
Yes.
And if we are not changing, we will have a dire future because we need to co-create. We need all those plants and animals, you know. We need the bacteria. You know, should not fight them. The only reason that we have disturbances is because our system is not functioning properly. Yeah? Because we can deal with anything if we are in harmony, because then we are in harmony.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. There's so much more to be shared about that, and I love that. It's truly, and what I also love is like coming to this deeper understanding that we have all the elements, but we are also part of the elements, and our body is part of the elements, and so it's expanding again, like how we are also part of Mother Earth with our physicality, but also experiencing everything with our subtle senses, because it's so much larger than. But to fast forward to come to the end almost of this, so what is your mission? Because you're doing beautiful work, and if people want to know more about you, I'll place the information and your links below. But what is your mission at this moment? What is your truth that you are feeling called to share? Like, what is driving you now to bring forward the wisdom and your discoveries? Yeah.
Well, it's actually pretty simple. What drives me is to find people that are willing to let go of their concepts, realizing that we need to create a new vision for Mother Earth. And that vision needs to include all living beings, whether they are visible or not visible, and going to that understanding that together we are supposed to evolve into what we can call the new Earth. Yeah. So for me, the key point is to create information that will help people to understand that we need to go to a new vision. Yeah. So I summarize that under metaphysical ecology, because in a sense, it's basically saying that our world that we live in, our home that we live in, is physical and non-physical and subtle, and is that whole system that we need to learn to connect with. That we don't have to do that alone, we cannot do it alone, that we need to do that in collaboration. And the only way to get collaboration is there is sufficient understanding. And if we also understand that all animals, all plants, all trees are waiting for us until we are ready to finally take our place in its fullness, and then we can move all together to the new world. You know, so that vision, to give that form, to help people to see those aspects where they resonate with, because we're all unique. We all have to find our own unique role within that whole, and together then get to that point where we say, okay, I connect with my role. And I feel that instead of discussing with you where I don't agree with you, that we go to that common thing, that common theme. We all came here to help Mother Earth to evolve. Then I think we have a chance not only to change what's going on, but to create a world that we cannot even imagine how beautiful that can be.
I think that's a beautiful message and a beautiful mission. And what I also love, like in your work, is bridging the understanding with the feeling. And because also in our own system, when we invite our brain along and it gets bits and pieces of understanding, it can also relax more. And in that, you can open everything more instead of our brain feeling like, okay, I have no clue and I feel fear because I don't understand. So I love in your work, and it's truly the beautiful co-creation and us stepping into our light and our truth and our centeredness, because by that, yeah, so much more happens. So thank you for bringing your light and sharing your, if there was one last sentence or tip, advice to everyone tuning in, what would it be?
Follow your heart.
Yes, a beautiful message. So I thank you for sharing, and I thank everyone for tuning in, and I'm looking forward to seeing you all in the next Soul Love podcast. So for now, much love. Bye. Thank you for joining this episode of Soul Love. If you want to find out more about what we do, you can find it below. And I'll see you in the next episode. Much love.